On your hardcore journey, you're going to be completing many quests. Whether it's carrying a package halfway across the world, collecting hooves from apparently hoofless zebra, or delving into a dungeon to defeat a boss. Classic leveling is something that takes a long time, even for the most experienced of players. During that journey, certain quests that you come across may prove a little more difficult than others. In fact, some of them are just straight up incredibly overtuned and not fair at all towards the player. Those are the quests we are going to be talking about today. Whether the quest is a trap, a dangerous escort, or just in a cave in general, there are some quests out there which you should probably give a second thought towards before you accept them unprepared. Now, of course, there are elite quests in the game which you're expected to be in a group for, and there are even people who try to solo dungeons too. And whilst these are feats of strength in of themselves, well, you're meant to be in a group. The quests I'll cover today are things which are specifically not marked as elite and can easily catch you off guard if you approach them solo, or if you don't read the quest text, because quite a few of these quests do drop hints that you should probably bring more than one person. And it is difficult narrowing it down to just 10, but for me, these are some of the hardest quests to attempt on your hardcore character. But before we go on, a quick word from today's sponsor, Factor 75. I'm told summer is here, which means it's prime grass-touching season, and with Factor 75 you can order and plan your meals to suit your lifestyle. Factor 75 offer delicious, dietitian-approved meals delivered straight to your doorstep. You also won't be spending hours in the kitchen, as each meal is ready in 2 minutes. It's microwavable food, but just not like you've had it before. So if you're looking to eat healthier or wanted to pick up on some better eating habits, Factor 75 can help there. Their meals are calorie counted and the weekly menus feature over 30 restaurant quality meals, including keto, calorie smart, vegan, vegetarian, and many more. And you'll always be able to find something thanks to their rotating menu, so you and your wallet will both be looking fully buffed. Plus, with their special packaging, you don't even need to be at home to receive your meals, so why not give them a try? Use my link or go to factor75.com and use code POGWillieJune50 for 50% off your first box. Once you click, my description will live update to count up the purchases. Many thanks as always to Factor75 for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. Starting off over in the Western Plaguelands, you will have had a good amount of time on your character when you reach this quest, and have already gotten way further than most will. But in these later game zones are some really nasty quests. The first one I want to touch on is called A Matter of Time. It's a quest from Chromie in Underhull that has you use a temporal displacer on nearby silos to summon and then destroy 15 temporal parasites. It sounds simple enough, but there are 2 problems here. First up is the fact these parasites spam a slowing effect, which makes it difficult to escape and totally ruins melee DPS. Second is how many of them can spawn. After you use the displacer, up to 3 parasites can spawn at one time, and after you kill one, there is a chance for another to respawn and take its place. I'm not sure what the limit is on how many can spawn at once and replace others, and I feel as though I've seen about up to 6 total personally. This makes the quest particularly dangerous, as you can't be sure whether there is another spawn coming or not. What I'd suggest doing if you're on a class less able to handle many mobs at once is to use the silos on the southeast of Underhull. Make sure you're only summoning parasites from one of the silos, and then use the nearby water to reset aggro. This technique worked during Classic, and it still should on Era 2. Next is another quest from the Plaguelands, this time over to the east. It's kind of a surprise the first time you see this person here, but Tyrion Fordring himself is holed up at a small house in the northwest of the zone. He has a huge lore-heavy quest line involving a whole lot of mob grinding and dungeon running. One of the early parts of this quest is named Of Forgotten Memories. It has you go retrieve an item that's been buried outside a crypt to his south, and it seems like a pretty simple recovery quest. But it is not. When you loot the dirt pile, a level 57 named NPC and 3 level 55s will spawn. For some reason, all of these guys do way higher damage than average for their level, in addition to having over 5,000 health each. Simply put, taking on all 4 at once is going to be very challenging, especially if you are under-leveled. The good news is you only need to defeat the 50 57 to loot the item you need, and there are several ways to do this quest pretty safely. First of all, if you're playing any ranged class in the game, there is a small broken down part of the fence nearby to where you loot the dirt pile. If you run up to this, tap jump and forwards and then do that again, you'll be able to jump over it. The mobs will have to run far around to the side in order to reach you here, so you can simply wear the leader of the robbers down, loot him and then reset the other mobs. If you're a melee, you need to do a split pull on the mobs. In order for this to work, you need to aggro all 4 mobs at the same time with a single attack. You can't pull one mob and have the others aggro off of him and follow you. That won't work. The best way to do this is via a consumable that deals AoE damage, such as grenades. And even if you aren't an engineer, you still get nades from various quest rewards, so you'll probably have some on you. So you nade the mobs, run away, keep the 57 in combat with thrown weapons or other attacks, and after a while the 55 should reset, leaving you with a 1v1. And you should keep running with a 57, as the 55s might just re-aggro anyway. Or, you know, just run in, blast all your cooldowns and hope for the best. That can work too. Next is first of the defend against waves of enemies types of quest on this list, called Pawn Captures Queen. It's fairly deep into a quest chain which starts in Tanaris and takes place in Ongoro Crater. This has you use an item to summon mobs in the back of a cave. After using the item, 2 mobs will instantly spawn to defend the hive. Upon defeating them, 3 more will instantly spawn, and when you defeat them, the queen herself will spawn alongside 2 more mobs. The big tip here is you don't need to instantly fight one wave after the other. If you stand towards the entrance of the room, you'll be able to eat and drink up to full health and mana in between each wave. As for the last wave with the queen, you only technically need to defeat her for the quest item, and then you could run away and de-aggro the other 2 mobs, but this is risky. There's a pretty good chance that enemies will have started to respawn back near the entrance of the cave, and you could just be running back into even more danger, so I plan to defeat all 3 waves if possible. Next, I want to cover one Horde specific and one Alliance specific quest. These are both very difficult and should be approached with caution on a hardcore character. The Horde one is Test of Endurance, which takes place in 1000 Needles. This is part of a really long quest chain, which during this part has you go into a nearby Harpy cave, another cave quest, get used to seeing them, and defend against several waves of enemies. And despite this quest taking place around level 30 or so, it is way more dangerous than the one we just talked about in Ongoro. After destroying one of the food crates, you start the encounter, which will summon 2 harpies in the first wave, 2 harpies in the second, 3 harpies in the third wave, and 2 harpies as well as the final boss in the last wave. Each wave comes in really fast, giving you very little time to recover in between each set. The cave also has extremely high mob density and very low respawn times, meaning that respawns will have more or less guaranteed happened by the time you're towards the end of the waves. If that doesn't sound bad enough, they also spam a silence effect, meaning if you're a caster, this quest gets way more difficult as you're stuck wanding for the most part. All in all, you should either overlevel this quest with all your cooldowns and potions available, or just probably consider skipping it if you're a caster. On the Alliance, one of the more dangerous early game quests I can think of is the escort part of the Absent-Minded Prospector. This has you take an NPC around a dig site in search of a relic. Escort quests are already notorious in World of Warcraft, mostly for having mobs which move a bit faster than you walk, but slower than you run. But this one has a whole other level of challenge. First of all, a dig site might as well be a cave as it has 1 entrance and 1 exit. The NPC you're escorting is level 16, whereas mobs in the dig site range from 18 all the way to 21. There are both very fast respawns and dynamic respawns in effect here. Dynamic meaning there must always be a certain number of enemies in the area at one time, so if you are unlucky, you can get rid of 1 golem and another instantly spawns to take its place. I've had this happen to me before. But the real danger here is the trogs that attack towards the back of the camp. You get 1 melee and 1 caster who can spawn up to level 21. This escort quest feels as though you need good RNG to take it on at a level appropriate to the quest, because when you first visit this area around level 17 to 18, good luck. That's all I'm gonna say. Speaking of dangerous escort quests, you can't mention the subject without talking about the chicken quests. There are 3 in total, all of which started from random zone-wide drops in mid to late game areas. Each one of these has a reputation due to the sheer number of mobs that you have to fight off during each of them. But if you are able to do these quests, they give amazing XP, good item rewards, and if you do all 3, you get a mechanical chicken of your own, which you can even trade on the auction house if you want to. For me, the least dangerous chicken quest is in Feralus, simply because 2 of the patrols that you run into are on the road, where there isn't a real risk of pulling anything else. Don't get me wrong, it's not exactly easy all the same, but the mobs you fight tend to be a little bit lower level than you are as well. The second hardest chicken quest for me is the one in Tanaris, and there's only really one difficult patrol to deal with, but it's really difficult. Around where you see a bunch of rocks, there will be 3 high-level Scorpid that spawn, which also apply a stacking poison debuff. The Scorpid themselves will already pose a problem for most players, but there are also several normal mobs roaming the area too, which can easily chain pull in the fight. Oh, and also, if somebody has failed this quest before you, these Scorpids stay alive in the world for ages and just kind of auto-fail the next person attempting the quest. But the hardest chicken escort has to be the one in the hinterlands. There are already dangerous patrols on the road with nearby mobs roaming about, but the bit that makes it challenging is the final encounter against the Vile Branch ambushers. The issue here is that there are stealthed wolves all over the place, and it's nearly impossible to fight both the trolls without accidentally pulling additional mobs into the fight, making things even harder than they already are. There are 2 things you can say about these escort quests, and indeed all escort quests for that matter. Pre-clear where possible. If you know where you're going, you can ensure that the way is safe, apart from the additional NPCs that will spawn. And secondly is sometimes you don't need to fight anything at all. If the NPC you're escorting does not enter combat with the patrol, they will just keep running along happily, and as long as you don't fall too far behind, you will not fail the quest. This can be consistent to pull off once you have a mount, and before that some classes can handle kiting mobs better than others. Mages can take enemies to the side and freeze them forever, and hunters can pull out mobs and feign death, and so on. Next is a quest back in STV called Strangle Fever. This has to be one of the most dangerous defense quests in the game. In fact, I'd say there's only one harder than this. The saving grace here is that this quest takes place outdoors, so you can pretty easily escape if things go wrong. Either way, the objective is to loot the heart of Mock the Savage. Getting him to spawn though can be tricky. First up, you need to collect 10 gorilla fangs to begin the event. The first wave you'll run into is 3 enraged gorillas to deal with. After that, you have a short amount of time to recover before the next wave of 5 gorillas will arrive. You must deal with all of these whilst ensuring that the quest troll NPC remains alive. After that, the last wave of 6 gorillas, including the boss, will come. Now this is kind of the easiest wave, as you no longer need to keep the NPC alive and only need to defeat the named mob, Mock the Savage. So you can just hide out of line of sight or in stealth, wait for the gorillas to engage the NPC, and then pull out Mock by himself, defeat him, and then run off and reset the rest. As a tip on this quest, the next wave won't spawn until all the gorillas from the last one are defeated, so keeping one mob CC'd or at low health and waiting for cooldowns is a very viable tactic. Next is an escort quest you should probably skip unless you've seen how it works firsthand, because what the game pulls on you here is kind of just not very fair, and I've seen so many hardcore deaths on this quest. It's none other than Get Me Out of Here in Desolus. It has you lead a level 39 NPC out of a centaur camp. The first patrol you have to deal with is a set of 4 level 40 centaur, though if you hang to the left of the pathway, the NPC should be able to just about avoid them without you having to intervene. The problem here is the second patrol, which has 3 centaur and 2 hyena pets. This pack is nasty for so many reasons. The hyena can see through stealth, so don't even think about sneaking past them, and the centaur disarm as well as spam a net, so it drastically cuts down the DPS of meleeers and makes it very difficult to escape in general. This also makes kiting the mobs to the side problematic if you end up getting rooted at a bad time. It's worth a try if you want to have a go at a challenging quest, but you really do have to go out of your way to pick this one up. Next, it's back to Stranglethorn Vale again. There's quite a few hard quests in this zone, for the last part of the quest line named the Bloodsail Buccaneers. So the earlier parts of this quest have you investigate the blood sale and defeat some swashbucklers. You usually do this around level 41, maybe 42, and then you get a follow-up quest to assault the blood sale ships, which are just anchored off the coast of Stranglethorn Vale. You have to fight your way inside each of the 3 separate ships, which both have extremely high mob density, fast respawn rates, and way higher combat levels compared to the rest of the zone. To top it off, the objective of the quest is to defeat the captains. Each of these captains have been bumped up a few extra combat levels, ranging from 46 all the way to 48. So taking on this quest as soon as you can after having done the previous one is incredibly risky. Also, there is a little gap in the ship's stairs as you head down below deck. And if you get unlucky, mobs can see through there and aggro and end up chain pulling 3 or 4 others, leading to a situation that can very quickly get out of hand. This quest is one to come back to at a higher level for sure. Honourable mention to a quest here, which isn't exactly difficult per se, it's just impossible to do it without dying. As part of the Lincoln quest chain that starts in Ungoro Crater, you have to create a Vidare elixir. If you use this while standing in the graveyard in Tanaris, it will instantly kill you, allowing you to speak with a ghost to continue the quest chain. So yeah, goes without saying, you probably don't want to be doing this on your hardcore character. And finally, it's probably the hardest quest in the entire game to do at a level appropriate to it. Honestly, I don't know what Blizzard was thinking with this one, but it combines elements of every dangerous quest possible into one. You're defending versus waves, you have little recovery time, you're in a cave, there are fast respawns, there are mobs that run in fear at high speed, you have a very small area to fight in, the list just goes on and on. It's a random out-of-the-way quest in the Stone Talon Mountains called Gorenzo's Orders. You've probably not even ever done it, or maybe even seen it. The first wave you have to deal with are 3 kobolds which are around level 20, not too bad that. Followed shortly after by 4 more, all around level 20. This time you have 2 meleeers and 2 casters. This second pull is a lot harder due to the increased damage you'll be taking from the casters. The final pull is 4 level 23 to 24 kobolds, including one with an aura that increases the attack speed of nearby allies by 25%. This is a level 22 quest, by the way, which makes it so much more difficult since your class will be lacking certain key defensive or offensive abilities. And even if you try to kite mobs out of the cave during the quest or pre-clear, respawns will happen during this quest because they just happen that fast here. If there was ever a quest to just skip, this is it, or just really over-level it. I mean, you do get a decent pair of mail boots out of it, but I'm not sure they're worth the risk. Anyways, those are 10 of my quests which I reckon are the most challenging in Classic to go into unprepared on a hardcore character. It's definitely difficult to narrow it down just to 10 since there are so many that can be problematic, but I tried to go for ones here which more or less any class or spec in the game could have issues with. I guess the summary is escort quests as well as defending against waves of mobs inside of caves are both pretty tough. Huh, who knew? Either way, that's all for today. Any others you'd include, do let me know below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all on the next one very soon.